Good morning. I put mascara on and I feel beautiful, but that doesn't matter. What I'm going to talk to you about today is not math. So yay for those of you who feel like you're not math people. But I chatted with a friend yesterday who's actually super pumped about some of the gains that her kids have been making, and she's like giving herself a pat on the back because she feels really proud as a parent to know that she's kind of the one facilitating the learning, and she gets to see firsthand how her kid is improving. So anyway, what we got chatting about was printing. And some of you are probably thinking, oh my goodness, I had no idea how bad my kid's printing was. Or on the flip side of that, you're thinking, wow, they print better than I do. So what I'm going to focus on today are some tips for proper letter formation and the importance of why forming a letter with the proper formation actually has benefits down the road. So if you're like super pumped because your 3 or 4-year-old is writing their name for the first time, you actually have an advantage because you can stop and catch right now some of the formation errors that they might be making. If they're a little bit older, it's kind of hard to correct. You have to retrain the brain almost in order to help them form their letters properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a few tips for how I would teach letter formation, some strategies for keeping them on track, and then visualize like images so your kid can actually self-correct on their own. So I'm going to flip to the camera and the piece of paper, and if you stick around, you're going to hear me sing. So might want to hang in there for that one. All right, see you in a bit. All right, before I get started, I just wanted to kind of focus on why printing matters. And this is just a short list, so I just took 30 seconds and wrote down a few of the reasons why I can think of without actually having to cite and name research. But printing matters for a variety of reasons, primarily for input and output efficiency. So the longer it takes for a child to think about how a letter is formed and having to apply the fine motor skills in order to be able to do that, the longer it is before they can actually get what it was they were thinking out on paper. So when we practice and hone proper printing formation, our kids, just like adults, and as you have hopefully become efficient, you're able to get out on paper what it is that you're thinking. And the baby's moving the screen. All right, so I've distracted her. Hopefully I can get through the rest of this segment. Yeah, so input-output efficiency, I would say primarily is our number one reason why printing matters. In addition to that, and I'm not just talking about letters here, this goes hand in hand for numbers as well. So we want to have efficient input-output for our writing skills as well as our computation skills. A lot of people will say, well, why does printing matter if our kids are on technology and they should be typing and their computer skills are going to offset their writing, and we really shouldn't have them writing out on paper, yada yada. It does matter. You're efficient with computer technology, but you also had years of experience getting out your thinking on paper. There's a lot to be said for actually taking pen or pencil to paper. Fine motor skills will develop properly. So in addition to that, you also want to make sure that your kids have proper pencil grip. There can be all kinds of different variations of grip, but having a sound pencil grip matters as well. That'll affect their printing and their fine motor skills. In addition to that, actually taking the time to organize our work. That goes hand in hand with a lot of different cognitive function, but we actually need to have lots of experience learning how to organize work on paper. So if that means learning how to write from left to right, how to skip lines, how to categorize things, all of that correlates to our ability to print and to have it be legible and neat so that other people can read it. And actually so that your kids can go back and read it. I can't tell you how many times in a day in a regular classroom where kids are submitting work, and when I ask them to read it, they can't even read what they wrote. So key for organization, and then along with that comes pride. If your work looks good and other people can read it, there's a lot of pride that goes hand in hand with that. If we let the printing errors and misconceptions go too long, it becomes really difficult to correct the older a child gets and the more ingrained those patterns are in their mind. And then that severely affects their pride and the level of, satisfaction that they feel when they are taking things to paper. Actually too, also, we talk about cursive all of the time. I hear, grandmas and grandpas talking about how we don't teach cursive. We can't teach cursive if our kids don't have proper letter and number formation. Once they're fluent printing uppercase, lowercase letters and their numbers properly, then you can have a transition into cursive. And it'll make a little bit more sense when we get into how letters are formed. Often their formation is directly correlated to how we will print them later on with cursive writing. All right, rule number 1, start at the top. Seems simple enough, but you probably haven't given a whole lot of thought to this. I want you to imagine, or if you've got a piece of paper in front of you right now, I want you to imagine a pen or marker drawing your name and the actual act of drawing it. Where do you put your pencil first? I hope it's at the top. All right. Letters and numbers on the whole are formed starting at the top. I go back to the top every single time. Back to the top, at the top, and at the top. All right. The next experiment would be to have your kids write their name or a sentence, a series of words, and really pay attention to where they start their letters. If they're starting them at the bottom, it's okay. It happens all of the time, but it needs to be corrected. So this is the fun part where you get to hear me sing a little song. If you want to write a letter, start at the top. If you want to write a letter, start at the top. If you want to write a letter, then you better. If you want to write a letter, start at the top. All of our letters start at the top. E's a tricky one, but we'll get to it. Okay? That's the number 1 rule. Sing the song, memorize it. I'll do it one more time for you before the end of the video. But the number 1 rule and thing we need to look out for first is whether or not our kids are starting their letters and their numbers at the top. The next thing, chances are, they might need a little bit of work correcting their letter formation. Actually, I'm going to do something else here. I'm just going to do... It's been a while since I've done this. All right, I'm going to draw a little picture here, but you can see with the black, I've drawn out some primary lines. You've probably seen these in your kids' notebooks or on a worksheet. I remember it from when you were in school. Oftentimes, it's formatted into primary lines in your child's agenda, but these are called primary lines and they are key for helping with proper letter and number formation. So I'm just going to finish my little picture here. Make it really pretty. All right. This is a visualization or the key picture that I want you to use or a reference when you're working with your child on their printing. We've got the sky, we've got the grass, we've got our beautiful flower with its leaves and, of course, its roots. This visual I found worked really well when I taught kindergarten and grade 1, and then again even later on to reinforce with some of my older students to help them with their letter formation. So all of our letters that are tall, we've got tall letters, we've got short letters, and then we've got hanging letters. Okay, so pretty straightforward, our tall letters and our short letters. Our hanging letters are our letters like G, Y hangs, J hangs. Our hanging letters are important in that they're going to tie into the roots here of our photo in a second. Okay, so with this visual here, we are going to draw out the alphabet, and I'm going to walk you through some of the letters that I find are really tricky or that maybe your kids are struggling with. All right, so there's actually one thing that I forgot to add to my little visual, and I've put them down here, but a few years ago I had a couple of kids that pointed out that I needed to have birds in the sky. So I'm gonna add a few birds in the sky, and then I'll explain to you why those are there afterwards. All right, so I've also written down for you just a few pieces of language that I use when I'm instructing letter formation. So we've got down, up, over, circle, big stick, big curve, little curve, and pretty much every letter can be formed with language like this once we break it down. So I guess starting with the beginning of the alphabet, I'm going to do uppercase A, which is 3 sticks. Starting at the top, we do big stick, back to the top, big stick, little stick. All right, so you notice I do my big stick from the clouds to the grass, and then I cross it at the flowers. Okay. Uppercase B, big stick from the clouds to the grass, little curve, little curve. Lowercase letters are short letters, for the most part. There's a few lowercase letters that are tall, like the letter T, but on the whole, most of our lowercase letters are short, and they'll involve a hanging letter, or words will have, some of our lowercase letters are hanging letters, is what I meant to say. So lowercase a, we start at the flowers for lowercase a. We go all the way around to make a circle, and then back down again. My marker doesn't come off the paper. You might have your children right now starting at the bottom and then adding a little stick. Sometimes the stick's up in the air up here, but the ultimate goal is to be able to form lowercase a in one motion or one solid line. So circle, little stick. All right, starting at the flowers. Let's do I. Starts at the flowers, down to the grass, little stick, and here's where the birds come in handy. Up in the sky where the birds are flying, we're gonna add a little dot. Lowercase j, same thing. We start at the flower for the J, and it's a hanging letter. It's got roots, so we're gonna come underneath the line, and then we go back up to the sky to where the birds are flying to add my little dot. Okay. If I were you, I would suggest focusing on letters that follow similar patterns and do those in an order, or do those all together at the same time, as opposed to doing and teaching your alphabet from A to Z. I might start with H, for example. Starts in the sky. It's a big stick down to the grass, up to the flowers, and back down to the grass for H. H is really similar to N. Instead of starting in the clouds, we start at the flower. We go down to the grass, back up to the flower, and back down to the grass again. So similar pattern or movement or motion. And actually this is also going to be similar to lowercase b, where I go down, up, and around to make the B. So same idea. M is another one that would fall into this category. I'm going to start at the flowers, down to the grass, up and over, up and over. Okay, I realized that I had cut some of that off, but here's J where my hanging letter is. Y would be another hanging letter, and it's just 2 sticks. Little stick, big stick that carries underneath the line. G is a lot like A. I would maybe do those 2 together. So a circle, and then a hanging curve underneath. Uppercase C is our big curve starting at the top, and actually, this is where the birds will come in handy again, because we're not quite starting in the clouds. We have to come down to where the birds are flying in order to form our big curve. We go up to the clouds, down to the grass, and then back up to where the leaves of the flower are. The leaves of the flower are also really helpful for lowercase e, because this is actually where we start lowercase e, at the leaves. We do a straight line, we go up and around with a big curve. And another cute little rhyme or way to remember this, maybe some of you have heard it before, is to start at the leaves we're gonna hit the ball and go all the way around the bases. It's another good little trick, okay? I'm just trying to think if there's any other really tricky letters that kids struggle with. E is a funny one. You'll often get kids doing things like this, forming from the bottom. Sometimes they will go so far as to do a curve like this. They cross the line and then they add a little hook on the bottom. Anytime you see letters, especially like this, or it taking a really long time for your kid to put that letter together, then you know it's time to go back and reevaluate the pattern that they're using. This takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So imagine writing, imagine poor Eleanor when she goes to write her name out at school for the first time. If she's having to put a lot of thought into, the 3 or 4 part steps in order to form one letter, it's going to take her forever to write her whole name out. Okay, I'm going to put the paper and just adjust my camera. All right. So a couple things to remember. Give your kids the primary lines. Draw the picture or have them do it. And you want to have lots of repeated practice with the same letter over and over again. And you might have to start, for some of our really little ones, a good trick. I'll just do my name here. I'll do my uppercase J, my O, my lowercase d, and my I. I did this in a yellow marker, or if you've got a highlighter, that'll work too. And a really good tip, Nell, look out. Let go, there. A really good tip is to give your kids a starting point. So I'm gonna start my J there, my O starts here, my D will start here, my I starts here. So I've given them a starting point, and then have them actually use a pencil or a pen to trace. Okay, so I'm going to start at the top, down to the grass, up to the leaves or to the flowers. Starting at the flowers, I do my circle, clouds to grass, back up to the flowers and around, little stick, little dot to fill it in. So for our really young ones, give them that opportunity to fill in and trace those letters. And a highlighter is super handy and a lot faster than you actually doing tracing dots. Have them, if you've got a kid who's 9 or 10 and they are consistently struggling with the same letter, have them practice that letter over and over and over again. The repetition is going to help break the bad pattern and instill the new pattern. The other thing, I'm just going to do really quick because I wanted to keep this video short, is I'm going to give you numbers 1 through 9. And I'm going to say a little number rhyme. You can look this number line up on Pinterest. I'm sure it's there, and you could, make it fancy and do a little chart or a poster for your kids to help them remember. But I'll just walk you through the rhymes for forming our numbers. So number 1, a straight line down is fun. That is how we make a 1. 2 is going to start where the birds are, around the track and back. 2, 2, 2. Or 3. Around the tree, that is how we make a 3. Down and over and down once more, that is how we make a 4. Big fat 5 goes down and around, put on a hat to see what you found. Down to a loop, a 6 rolls a hoop. Across the sky and down from heaven, that is how we make a 7. First an S, but please don't wait. Climb back up to make an 8. First a ball, and then a line. That is how we make a 9. Yeah! Okay, hopefully that's helpful. I'll put back on the computer so you can see me one last time, and I'll hopefully cover anything that I think I missed. Okay? All right, Nell's joining me for the end of the video. We're gonna sing our song for you one more time. Are you ready now? Here we go. Okay. If you want to write a letter, start at the top. If you want to write a letter, start at the top. If you want to write a letter, then you better. If you want to write a letter, start at the top. Okay, hopefully you found that useful. And don't panic if your kid's printing is atrocious. Just takes a little bit of practice and redirection, and you'll get them back on track. And you'll be writing cursive next. All right, see you later. Say bye. Can you wave? Yeah.